well, good morning everybody, and thanks very much, Tasha, for inviting us to be part of this today. First of all, I'll just start off by introducing my colleagues, Julian Boram, who is our Group Manager of Consumer Engagement at the Authority, and Dr. Micheal Cohen, who's our Creative Producer in our events team. Oops. It's okay. And another one. Oh. Lovely. Look, today we're really taking an opportunity to provide you with an overview of the Authority's role in the broader context and our key objectives for the Darling Harbour Precinct. We will touch on UPN, but I know you have a presentation after this that will be talking in much more detail about that project. So we'll be looking more at the Authority's role in a broader context today. And we're looking at our objectives for the precinct over the next 3 to 5 years, during which time, as I'm sure you're all aware, Darling Harbour is going to undergo a major transformation with the development of the Sydney International Convention Exhibition and Entertainment Precinct. Sydney Harbour Foreshore Authority manages some of Sydney's most significant cultural and historical precincts, the Rocks in Darling Harbour, as well as foreshore lands, including the Bays Precinct. We manage significant commercial and retail leases, and we provide security, cleaning, building maintenance and other asset management services, and we also manage the public domain in our precincts. This map here, the yellow bits, are the bits that we own and manage. The Authority undertakes a variety of placemaking activities as well, and this is really an area that the Authority has considerable expertise in. We deliver marketing, visitor services, and host significant events in both the Rocks and Darling Harbour. And between them, the precincts attract around 39 million visitors annually. Our vision at the Authority is quite simple. It's to make unique places in Sydney that the world talks about. And underneath that umbrella, our strategic objective for Darling Harbour is to develop and maintain the precinct as one of the world's best waterfront, leisure, entertainment and business destinations for Sydney-siders and visitors. We have a strategic imperative to deliver on this vision to our communities and stakeholders through 25 community cultural and cultural festivals, 6 sporting events, 8 charitable collections, 6 major activations, 70 external activations, various sponsorships and partnerships, and this is all reflected in approximately 26 million people movements through the precinct every year. Darling Harbour, as I've mentioned, is going to undergo this major transformation over the next 3 to 5 years with the development of Psyche. And while this will be both an exciting and challenging time for the Authority, we're going to need to be flexible in how we maintain and position the precinct throughout this time. Ongoing activation is going to be key to this, and we've got some very particular objectives around activation of the precinct over this period. It's to keep Darling Harbour open for business. It's very important that the businesses in the precinct survive during this period, and also that there's a very strong public understanding and perception that despite all the construction that will be going on, the precinct is still open for business. So we need to provide more reasons for people to keep coming to Darling Harbour, give them a reason to visit. And most importantly, we need to empower our tenants by creating opportunities for them to participate and to succeed in a vibrant and must-visit destination. Maintaining relationships is going to be key to the precinct's success throughout this time. We need to maintain our relationships with our key precinct business partners. We need to work with them and the successful proponent for the psychic development to minimise disruption to the precinct, and we need to keep reinforcing the message that Darling Harbour is open for business. Over the last few months, we've obviously been needing to plan our approach to managing the precinct during this redevelopment phase and beyond. This has included the development of a strategic framework that we will be working within over the next 3 to 5 years. The strategic framework essentially provides an overarching strategic plan under which there'll be a number of key deliverables. The Darling Harbour Strategic Plan, which I'll talk to in a moment. Brand positioning, which Julian will be talking to. A redevelopment alliance, and this is a strategic alliance that we're in the process of developing with the head lessees in the precinct. An activation program, which Micheal will speak to. Obviously the SHFA delivery and also the UPN delivery. The Darling Harbour Strategic Plan is really all about our need to develop a framework to integrate with the Urban Quarter project and to take the precinct into the future. The SHFA redevelopment has provided a catalyst for a review of the Darling Harbour precinct in the broader context of the city. So looking at the surrounding developments, the introduction of more competition in the precinct and around. Barangaroo is on our doorstep, Darling Quarter, and setting a bet which has really set a benchmark for the Darling Harbour precinct going forward. Many existing tenants in the precinct have already recognised the opportunity that the redevelopment represents to upgrade, refurbish, expand or reposition their existing premises, and they're already starting to approach us with some really grand plans for their own future and that of the precinct. So to assess these requests in a structured and consistent manner, we're currently developing a strategic plan to guide the orderly development of areas that sit outside the development envelope or integrate with the development. We're identifying opportunities to improve precinct-wide connectivity to the city, wayfinding enhancements and public domain upgrades, and also determining what we need to consider in our forward planning for capital works and how best to maximise these opportunities that are created by the redevelopment for the benefit of the precinct as a whole. In terms of UPN delivery, UPN essentially provides a whole-of-government solution to facilitating a very important cross-city linkage through to Darling Harbour and the Foreshore. The authority in this area is taking a lead agency role in coordinating the design and delivery of UPN. As I said, I won't go into too much detail because there is another presentation to follow, but our objectives around this are to create a continuous link from Central Station to the Darling Harbour Foreshore that expresses the unique educational, cultural and technological personality of the link, which provides an opportunity also for us to deliver world-class activation. Due to conclude around late 2013 to coincide with UTS's Frank Gehry designed Dr. Chow Chat Wing building, and the connections at the northern end of UPN as well will need to be coordinated with the SHFA planning process as well. I'll now pass over to Julian, who will take you through the brand positioning.
Thank you, Eloise. Now more than ever, particularly with a material investment that's not only being made within the precinct, but it's about to be made within the precinct with both UPN and the SHFA development. We're talking billions of dollars of investment. It's quite crucial that we have a very clear understanding about what our brand positioning is going to be for the precinct as a whole. The way in which we've approached brand is very much as a strategic proposition. So it sits at the very centre of the precinct. So unlike, you may often hear brands being used in an atypical marketing context, where it's about logos, taglines and pretty pictures. This is not the way that we've approached it. We've actually looked at it as if we were to put the customer experience at the centre of the precinct. So it helps shapes not only design, but also all the things that fit around it. What would that solution be? And that's the brand essence that we've actually developed, which will sit at the core of this precinct. So the lens, for want of a better word, that we've developed for Darling Harbour and spreading into UPN areas is around the thought, the concept of big time. So it's about a larger-than-life experience that's by the harbour, spectacles, whether it's events, whether it's convention centre activity, where the world comes to Sydney. And the three key attributes that give that particular thought context around celebration. And part of the key for celebration is tying back to the very roots of where Darling Harbour and surrounding areas began. So it's tying it back to that celebration to allow people to come and enjoy and celebrate in that area. dynamic. So obviously within all of the areas surrounding Darling Harbour and within Darling Harbour, there's a real pace and energy that ebbs and flows. It changes from day to night. So it's making sure that whatever gets developed obviously embraces that proposition. And the final attribute is innovation, which draws in very much the business and enterprise aspect. So while atypically Darling Harbour has been primarily associated with events, we really wanted to broaden that aspect and make sure that when the Psyche project lands, where you have literally some of the most world-renowned, intelligent folk coming to actually have their conferences, that this positioning catered for that. So what you see here really very much is a lens, it's a thought. It's not something that's necessarily going to appear in a marketing context, but it's the essence that sits at the very thought of everything that we do from a design, from a marketing, from an events, and so on perspective. And part of the way that big time can be articulated across a variety of dimensions. So if it was an experience, we'd be looking at electrical, with the playgrounds, the aquariums, the big screens, the fireworks, the light shows, the parades. A very wild time is the sentiment that we'd be looking for. It obviously impacts food and beverage, so making sure that there's a massive diversity of range, so it caters for all budgets. From a retail perspective, brings out the vibrancy. If it was a new flagship store, it may be an Apple store, something that has that interactivity and real best practice in modern retail. Events, massive spectacles on a huge scale. Culture, we've already touched on, where Sydney comes to celebrate. And in business, making sure that we're on the world stage. So making sure that the sentiment of leading Sydney, where world-class conferences are available. So this sentiment is what we're driving for in an experience context for customers, but also for building and architectural design. And the way in which we have approached this project is that there are sub-precincts within Darling Harbour, and obviously UPN being a key component to that. It's ensuring that while each individual part may have its own character, that it all fits under that master of big time. So I guess the challenge is making sure that when you're building or thinking about placemaking or thinking about designs, how do you make sure that this big time experience is woven into the framework? I'll now hand over, oh, and just touching on the actual aspects of the precinct, you can just see the surrounding areas, the various quadrants that are within it, and obviously there's a complexity of different aspects and different personalities within precinct, but again, just reiterating, it's ensuring that big time overlays across all of those experiences.
Okay, I may get up and walk around and gesture a little bit. So can you all hear me if I don't use the mic? Yeah? Okay, good. So as we've heard, Darling Harbour's changing. And for those of you who have been down to the Darling Quarter, I don't know if you know that new area where the new Commonwealth Bank is, you can already see the change, that one small project has had in that precinct, both physically and, culturally, how we experience that place. And so it's quite, it's difficult for us to think about it now in some ways, because we think, we say the West Darling Harbour, people automatically have some sort of vision in their head. But you can just look at Darling Quarter and you can get a sense of how a place can really change. Of course, we're talking physically, how it can change, but also culturally and how people's associations of that place can change. So I guess this brings us to the essence of what, this idea of placemaking is. And today, look, I'm going to stand up there, I couldn't resist. I just couldn't see it, what you see. Now I can see it. So for me, this idea of placemaking is really the centre of what we do in terms of our activation of Darling Harbour. And yeah, you can jump to the next one if you like. So just quickly, to give you a bit of a snapshot, initially, of what we do at Sydney Harbour Foreshore Authority in terms of place making and place activation, events and activations. So this is a bit of our, and we've got a bit of a chops there, but you can see it's really about being, our goal is to be really the most dynamic and innovative placemaking events and activations producer. So that's the goal. And so really it's about, we want people to come to our events and we want to put things on that really stir our visitors to our precincts, the Rocks and Darling Harbour specifically, get them, passionate, get them excited, get them curious, and get them kind of jolt their understanding of where they are. So this little event that you can see here is actually a thing that we did in the Rocks, and it's a project called the Village Bazaar, and I put a little bookmark against it because it's coming up in November and December. It's all these funny little curious experiences in different parts of the Rocks. And so people go off down little laneways and have these funny little, whether they're little cabaret shows or whether they're, we had a lecturer, I don't know if it was, I think he might have been from COFA, talking about the history of fire, in a little tent. There's all sort of strange little experiences you can have all around the Rocks. So it's really about getting people to think, oh, where am I? And that's the job of events and activations from my perspective. So I'll just quickly walk you through three different strategies that we work with, and then I'll sort of lead that into the UPN discussion. So for me, and for the team that I work with at SHFA, it's all about place. Okay, for me, the essence of putting events and activations on is really about tying to the place, creating an experience for people that they can't have at a Westfield shopping centre. We want them to be having an experience that they go, oh, this is attached to this place. I'm having this experience in the Rocks, on the harbour here, that really gets me thinking about the Rocks. This was an event that actually told, in a very poetic way, told a story about what had happened there at Campbell's Cove. So, in saying that it's all about place, for me place is about, of course it's about built form and the natural environment that you have in a place, but it's also about how communities use the place, and it's also about the histories and the social memories that are attached to that place. So I'm just going to muck around with this idea of place as we go through the rest of the discussion, just because I think it's a really important one. I've written tractors are important. Of course it's not a tractor, my 18-month, it's a digger. Of course it's a digger, my little son says digger. Diggers are important. Of course, when you're doing a big development, diggers are very important. Urban planning is important, design is important, construction is important. But I just sort of flag a thing that we really put into the mix at SHFA, because we do the big picture development side of things, but equally, and you can jump to the next one, placemaking and changing of places, it's about people. And of course we know this, but I think there is sometimes in a kind of urban design context or architectural context, people can kind of fall off the map sometimes. So really what we do at SHFA is really keeping that big picture development going, but we put the people in the middle of it, of course. And the picture you've got here is of so one of the festivals we run in the Rocks, which is coming up next month, called Aroma, and it's like 120,000 people come to the Rocks the last Sunday in July, and they buy cups of coffee all around the place. It's sort of like a coffee addict's heaven. And there's thousands of people queuing up for coffee and things. Anyway, so we make this little thing where you can go down this little back alley and pay $10 and have a tea leaf reading session. So you have that sort of one-on-one experience in a place where you're surrounded by thousands of people. So that's sort of a little tactic we use in that environment. Thanks, Tasha. So strategy 2, very simple. You want people to come to your events, you want to stimulate them, you want to inspire them, and you want to entertain them. And we do a broad range. You're already probably getting a bit of a sense of the range of stuff that we do. But it ranges from the big spectacle, something like the fireworks, to kind of, in Darling Harbour, we do a festival called Hoopla, which is a circus and street theatre festival. And at that festival, you can get into a little tent about this big with about, 12 other people, and you can watch, in the evenings, you can watch a woman pierce, what does she do? She swallows razor blades, so you can have this little strange little experience in a big environment, so it ranges from that spectacular to the quirky, to these pictures of the Fiesta event that we run in the end of September, which is a Latino festival, and this is a Brazilian giant puppetry parade. So there's a whole range of ways that we look to entertain, stimulate, and inspire. Sasha?
Sorry.
That's fine. The last strategy, again fairly simple, but it's about bringing as many partners and stakeholders to the party as possible. And there's a couple of angles I take on that. One is about creating events with different partners, so everybody's got a stake in it, and can win out of it, I guess, because the more people you have winning and championing your event, the better. So there may be partners, it may be tenants, it may be UTS, it may be whoever, you know. And then at the event, it's also about participation by a whole range of different people, a whole range of different sectors. So this is a good example. This is an event called Santa Fest. At Santa Fest, I don't know, you can kind of see the Santa on top, hovering up in the air over there. Throughout the month of December, you can see these giant inflatable Santas ranging from, I think, 4 metres to 8 metres, scaling the buildings all around Darling Harbour. And so the tenants actually get involved, and they put money into having a bit of a competition to see who can have the biggest specky Santa climbing the buildings. So we kind of got the Santas climbing around the buildings, the tenants are doing that. We have charities, so we work with a couple of different charities at the water spectacle event. This image here is some Santa babushka dolls designed by NIDA students who created work as part of the water spectacle event. And then we also had community groups who work in Darling Harbour. We had some outrigger canoers all dressed up as Santa as part of this big water spectacle. So you can see sort of that's my aim there in terms of getting a whole range of different stakeholders. Okay, so I'm speeding along here. So just quickly looking sort of, I guess, into the more distant future and then pegging it back towards, I guess, the UPN project, which will lead us into the next discussion. I just want to give you a bit of a sneak peek in terms of what we're thinking. And so really, this hasn't been shared with very many people, so I'll have to kill you all before you leave. But I promise I won't. So it's a whole range, it's a whole pocket full of ideas that we're coming up with for how we can keep Darling Harbour active and vibrant during the Psyche project. And of course, there's a segue there with the UPN. So thanks, Tasha. One of the things we're doing is really looking at Cockle Bay. We're going to have a lot of the land space of Darling Harbour eaten up by a development project. So we're looking to the bay to be a real attraction point for a whole range of different activities. It's Adelaide. Believe it or not, it's Adelaide. Fantastic Adelaide. So, you know, we're kind of using things like this kind of idea of swimming hole in the middle of the city. One of the things we're cooking up at the moment is a giant sort of floating art park idea. There's going to be a lot of hoarding around the building site, so there's a whole range of different interactive hoarding ideas that we're playing with at the moment. And hoarding is actually a great sort of, it's like a kind of, I don't know, we're going to have like a 5-kilometre peep show from what I can tell. There's all sorts of fun you can have with hoarding, you know. It's a really, there's a lot of play we can have in terms of both, and if we jump into the next one, you know, you can go from the sort of commercial retail end to the more sort of arts-driven end to the sort of community involvement ends. There's a whole range of different things that we're throwing around there. We're also looking at a number of different retail drivers. Of course, the businesses that are in Darling Harbour are going to be having a tough time, and so a lot of this is about how we can get them engaged and get them to really get their businesses out there in the public domain. And this is actually a picture of an event that we run in the Rocks called the Vintage Dinner. A lovely outdoor dinner that we run in the Rocks at it'll be at the end of September. And I'm sort of nearing the end here, but the last sort of area I want to talk about is pop-ups. And with pop-ups, there's a whole range of different things. This is a project that we did a couple of years ago called Greenhouse on the Foreshore over here, as you can see at Campbell's Cove. It was a food and beverage, sustainable cafe, I guess is the best way to describe it, where they, that's all food. I think there's strawberries growing all over it, and it was fully recyclable, and they ground their own flour and made pizza. It was a really great project. So there's the F&B, the food and beverage side of it. There's retail ideas that you can do in a pop-up context. There's obviously art installation projects. And one that I'm going to jump to, one that I'm going to talk to in a little bit more detail before I hand over is this idea of really about creating a pop-up environment which is a meeting space for dialogue. And I want to just sort of, you're getting all the hot off the press stuff here, and it's okay, we can tell us that. We'll just set it on.
I think we can trust them.
Okay, good. So, for me, I just want to sort of float an idea, really, which I'm just sort of slowly tinkering away with, and I'm interested to hear from anybody in the room, really, over the coffee break about what sort of legs this might have, because it's a project that I'm thinking would be great for the UPN sort of psychic, I guess, interface there. For me, and this is a shot, as you can, obviously it's in London, and it's a great pop-up project that was on the roof of a building. It was actually a dining hall run by a restaurant where, and I think it's called the East Dining Project. And it was on the roof of this building. And as you can see, it's in the middle of the building environment. For me, that's a really poignant backdrop, and I guess I flag this in the context of PsyKeep and the UPN. It's a very poignant backdrop, I find, that sort of building space, because it's not what it used to be, and it's also not what it's going to be. It's kind of in the middle. And so you're at this kind of threshold thing where it's kind of ripe for discussion. So I'm interested to float this idea around, and we can jump in the next one if you like, to launch and it's an idea that there's models of it that's already out there. I think the Guggenheim run a project in a few different cities. So it's a model, but I think we could very neatly adapt to the UPN and the PsyKeep nexus, if you like. I think there's a great opportunity for us to create a space in that UPN area, maybe towards the end of the project, where we can create a place for discussion in the city, and I've got a tentative title of calling it Living for the City, okay? So I think it's a great place to have a discussion zone about how our city changes and how the developments are going to affect the people, because again, I'm coming back to this idea, it's all about the people, what are these changes effects going to have on the people, in terms of excitement, in terms of social impact, etc. So I think you could do a whole project there, which is a place for discussion about how the city works. You could run these kind of masterclass symposia projects there. You could run community workshops. You could have art installations. You could have a cafe. You can have gigs. You can have a whole number of different things. So it's just a little thing that I put out there, and I'm really interested to speak to people and to see if it's got legs, because I've already talked to the Festival of Architecture loosely about the idea, and so I'm interested to see how it floats with people. And just sort of tying up there, one last image, really just another sort of example of some pop-up, an architectural project. I'm specifically interested, I put this sort of design-based picture up because I'm quite interested in the social history of that Darling Harbour area around the UPN. As we know, it's a train corridor leading to a whole bunch of rail and wharf buildings. So for me, architecturally, I guess that's something that I think is very interesting for us to start thinking about, and I'm sure that we're going to hear more in a moment about that exact thing, because I understand, that there's rail lines, there's all sorts of fun things, and Darling Harbour doesn't have a lot of that kind of stuff that you can play with in an interpretive way. And for us, both in the Rocks and in Darling Harbour, it's something we really want to tease out. How can people engage with the stories of the past while they're in the present? So I guess if we do some mad brainstorming over 3 or 4 croissants, maybe it'll be about this idea of how can we tease out that sort of interpretive content in Darling Harbour and the UPN. And I think that's all I've got. But we're open to a bit of questions if you will allow us.
Can I suggest this? How long have you guys got to spend with us this morning? Did you need to rush off?
We can stay for a little bit longer.
What I was going to suggest was we've got Sasha Coles and John Choi who are about to present to us the UPN work. And I think it might be interesting if we could save questions and speak about the two things together, because I think it's almost impossible to separate the UPN from what's happening down at PsyKeep. I think also for our Masters of Architecture students, it's worth noting, and I've said this to you before in different places, that we're taking the question of the broad quarter as our focus for this studio. But it will always be with reference to the UPN and with reference to what's planned for the UPN rather than what's there now. So Sasha Coles from Aspect Studios and John Choi from Choi Rapia-Figuera are going to speak to us now about what that proposal is so that we have a better understanding of it. So please keep that in mind, that it's like, I keep thinking it's like we hold the UPN in our peripheral vision rather than it being the focus of our vision, if that makes sense. So thank you so much. That was just really